It's one of those cold nights where staying in feels right. And it got me thinking about the movies our parents used to let us watch. You know, the ones that would probably get them reported to social services today. Gremlins, The Witches, Return to Oz. Movies that weren't quite horror films, but definitely weren't G-rated either. Here's the thing though, those movies weren't just entertainment. They were training wheels for life. They taught us how to be brave when things got weird. Today I'm breaking down 12 movies that scared the hell out of us as kids and why that was actually a good thing. In the 80s, our parents let us watch movies that would shock modern parents. These weren't sanitized, safe, scary movies. They were genuinely frightening films that lived in a gray area between kids' entertainment and horror. But those movies taught us crucial lessons about bravery, resilience, and facing our fears. Here are 12 things only kids who watched 80s scary movies remember, and the life lessons we learned without even realizing it. 1. Before 1984, you had 3 movie ratings: G for kids, PG for maybe ask your parents, and R for definitely not happening. There was no middle ground. Then Steven Spielberg produced Gremlins, and the movie started adorable with Gizmo, but escalated to Gremlins exploding in microwaves and getting pureed in blenders. Parents were furious, and Spielberg literally forced Hollywood to create an entirely new rating, PG-13. We were guinea pigs, the test subjects, the generation that made them invent a new category because our parents kept saying, yeah, they can handle it. But here's what Gremlins actually taught us. Actions have consequences. When you feed Gizmo after midnight, bad things happen. It's direct cause and effect that even a 7-year-old can understand. Plus, Billy doesn't have superpowers or special weapons. He's just a regular kid dealing with a situation that spiraled out of control. The message was powerful. You don't need to be special to face your monsters. You just need to be brave and resourceful. 2. Everyone remembers Slimer and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. But do you remember how absolutely terrifying that opening library scene was? That ghost goes from sweet old lady librarian to full-on demonic nightmare in seconds. Kids literally ran out of the theaters during that scene. But the Ghostbusters themselves faced that horror with science and sarcasm. They studied it. They built equipment. They joked about it even when they were terrified. The message was clear: knowledge is power. Intelligence beats supernatural evil. And being too old for a nightlight means learning to laugh at what hides in the dark. 3. The Monster Squad had a brilliant premise. Dracula is trying to take over the world with Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, the Mummy, and the Gill-Man for backup. And the only people who can stop them? A group of kids who meet in a treehouse. This movie understood something important. Kids aren't just victims in scary stories. Sometimes they're the heroes, specifically because adults have stopped paying attention. There's this recurring theme where the grown-ups just don't listen. They don't believe. They've lost the ability to see what's right in front of them. But the kids know monsters are real and they know how to fight them. And then there's that relationship between Frankenstein's monster and little Phoebe. He's 8 feet tall and legitimately frightening, but she sees past all that. She sees that he's lonely and misunderstood. That scene where she calls the bullies chicken shit to defend him, that's character development you rarely see in kids' movies today. The lesson? The scariest looking monsters aren't always the real threat. Sometimes the real threat is giving up on compassion. 4. The Goonies had the Fratellis who weren't cartoon villains. They were genuinely dangerous criminals. Ma Fratelli is legitimately scary. She's a violent criminal who will absolutely hurt kids if it serves her purpose. But the Goonies treat the whole adventure like, well, an adventure. Mikey's inspirational speech about their homes being demolished isn't just about saving houses, it's about refusing to let fear win. And then there's Sloth. Physically, he's designed to be frightening. The makeup is intense, especially for a kids movie. But Chunk sees past all that. He sees a person who's been abused and isolated and just wants a friend. That's a lesson we internalized. The most terrifying monsters are often just misunderstood people who needed someone to give them a chance. That's pretty sophisticated moral framework for a movie that also features a pirate ship and booby traps. 5. Return to Oz is Disney's secret weapon, childhood trauma disguised as family entertainment. The movie opens with Dorothy in a psychiatric hospital about to undergo electroshock therapy. Let me repeat that. A Disney movie that starts with a child facing electroshock treatment for insisting that Oz was real. Then she ends up back in Oz, except this time it's been destroyed. The yellow brick road is in ruins. The Emerald City is rubble. Everyone's been turned to stone. And then the Wheelers show up. If you were an 80s kid, I just gave you the chills by saying that word. The Wheelers were pure nightmare fuel. These shrieking, rolling humanoid creatures that moved in ways that humans shouldn't move. They represented chaos and danger in a world that was supposed to be magical and safe. But Dorothy doesn't have ruby slippers this time. She doesn't have Glinda to save her. She has to figure it out herself. And she does. In a world that's literally fallen apart, she finds a way to survive and rebuild. The lesson? Resilience isn't about preventing bad things from happening. It's about adapting when they do. 6. Return to Oz wasn't done traumatizing us. Princess Mombi collects heads like some people collect stamps, and her headless body chases Dorothy through the castle. That image haunted an entire generation of nightmares. This wasn't metaphorical horror, it was literal decapitation in a children's movie. But here's what Return to Oz taught us. Even when your yellow brick road is broken, you can still find your way home. Even when the magic is gone, you can create new magic. And sometimes the hardest journey is rebuilding what's been destroyed. Disney didn't soften this for kids. They trusted us to handle dark material and learn from it. That trust in children's resilience is something we've lost in modern filmmaking. 7. Roald Dahl never believed in talking down to kids. He never softened the scary parts. And The Witches, directed by Nicholas Roeg with creature effects by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, went all in on that philosophy. The Grand High Witch isn't hiding in a forest or a gingerbread house. She's at a hotel convention. She looks normal. She looks refined. And then she peels her face off. That face peeling scene traumatized a generation. Those effects still hold up today. They're genuinely disturbing. But that's exactly the point. The lesson was vigilance. Evil doesn't always announce itself. It often hides behind a normal face, a nice smile, a respectable appearance. The witches look like regular women until they're not. That's a crucial life lesson wrapped in practical effects and nightmare fuel. And then the ending. The boy stays a mouse. There's no magical cure, no happily ever after where everything's fixed. He's a mouse forever. And he accepts it because he still defeated the witches. That's mature storytelling. That's teaching kids that you don't need a perfect ending to have won the fight. 8. Something Wicked This Way Comes was Disney adapting Ray Bradbury, which should have been a warning sign. This is not a happy carnival movie. Mr. Dark runs a carnival that grants wishes, but every wish comes with a price. Usually your soul, your humanity, or your life. It's the monkey's paw as a theme park. The imagery is haunting. Mr. Dark has tattoos of everyone he's captured, their faces screaming silently on his skin. The carnival feels wrong from the first moment. Everything's slightly off, slightly too good to be true, and the kids learn the hardest lesson. Some deals are too dangerous to make. Some wishes cost more than they're worth. That's heavy philosophical ground for a PG-rated movie. But Bradbury never compromised, and neither did Disney. We learned that temptation is real, that evil often comes gift-wrapped. 9. Tim Burton decided to make death funny. Beetlejuice did something revolutionary. It made the afterlife a bureaucratic nightmare. Death wasn't scary, it was just inconvenient. You died and ended up in a waiting room with terrible magazines and a caseworker who didn't care. By making death mundane, Burton made it approachable. Suddenly, this huge existential terror that keeps kids up at night became kind of boring actually. Death was just another DMV. But beneath the jokes and visual effects, there's something genuinely comforting about this approach. The Maitlands are dead, but they're still themselves. They still love each other. They still have agency. Death isn't the end of who you are, it's just a transition. 10. Jim Henson decided to traumatize an entire generation with The Dark Crystal. This wasn't Sesame Street. This was a dark fantasy where villains literally drain the life essence from other creatures to stay alive. The Skeksis are grotesque, violent, and genuinely evil. The Garthim are armored monsters that kidnap innocent beings. And it's all done with Henson's incredible puppetry. The draining scene where they extract the essence from a podling is absolutely horrifying. You watch this innocent creature turn into an empty, soulless husk. That's not metaphor, that's showing children what it looks like when evil consumes innocence. But Jen and Kira don't give up. They face impossible odds, lose everything, and still keep fighting. The lesson? Even the darkest world, even when evil seems invincible, courage and compassion can heal what's broken. That's heavy material delivered through masterful puppetry. 11. The Neverending Story gave us one of the most traumatic scenes in 80s cinema. Artax, sinking into the swamp of sadness, while Atreyu begs him to fight. That horse doesn't die in battle, or sacrifice himself heroically. He dies because he gives up hope. He dies because sadness literally consumes him. That scene taught us about depression before we had the vocabulary to discuss it. It showed us that sometimes the people we love give up, and no amount of love or encouragement can save them even if they've stopped fighting. That's a brutal lesson for a kids movie, but it's true. And then there's Gmork, the wolf creature that explains the nothing, that emptiness that consumes imagination and hope. He's not just physically threatening, he represents existential despair. These weren't just monsters to defeat, they were concepts to understand and resist. 12. These movies shared one crucial lesson that ties them all together. Bravery isn't about never being afraid. It's about being terrified and acting anyway. Every protagonist in these films is scared. They're kids facing monsters, death, evil, and existential dread. But they don't let fear stop them from doing what needs to be done. That's what our parents understood when they let us watch these movies. Safe scares build brave kids. Controlled exposure to fear in a fictional setting where you know you're ultimately safe teaches resilience. We learned that monsters can be beaten, that evil can be defeated, that even when you're scared, you can still act. Maybe most importantly, we learned that the world is complex, that frightening looking creatures can be friends, that normal looking people can be dangerous, and that courage means acting despite fear, not being fearless. So here's what I keep coming back to. Our parents let us watch these movies. They took us to see Gremlins and the Witches. They rented us Return to Oz on Friday night. And you know what? We turned out okay. Maybe they knew something we're forgetting now. Maybe they understood that safe scares build brave kids, that controlled exposure to fear teaches resilience in ways that bubble wrap childhoods can't. So I want to ask you something, and I really want to hear your thoughts. Would you let your kids watch these movies today? Have we become more protective than our 80s parents were? Or were they onto something that we've lost? Drop a comment below. Tell me which of these movies traumatized you. Tell me if you're showing them to your kids, or if you think they're too intense. Next week, we're diving into 80s music culture, mixtapes, MTV, and the art of recording off the radio. You're not going to want to miss this. Thanks for watching. And remember, the monsters we faced as kids taught us how to face the ones we'd meet as adults.